So UFC 317 International Fight Week takes place this weekend. The main event is Ilia Topuria taking on Charles Oliveira, and these are my predictions and breakdowns for every single fight on the card. Starting off with the main event, we have got Ilia Topuria taking on Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira. Look, I said it in a video a couple of weeks back, Oliveira cannot win this fight.
Bruh.
He just can't. He's not going to beat Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria is going to defeat Charles Oliveira inside 2 rounds. But let's talk about the fight. A lot of people online are going down the route of, man, Charles Oliveira is so underrated, man. How is Ilia Topuria minus 500? Do they not know who Do Bronx is? He's a lion, man. He's a lion. Charles Do Bronx, let's go over him. Charles Oliveira, let's go over his whole thing here. So they say the size of Charles Oliveira, Ilia Topuria is too small. Ilia's power isn't going to translate up to lightweight. Did you see patient Oliveira in his last matchup? So let's go through all of those things. Starting off with Ilia Topuria being smaller than Charles Oliveira. That's kind of blown up even more now because of the Raul Rosas Jr. picture where Oliveira like mogged him and Ilia Topuria looked the same size. Ilia Topuria is the exact same size as Arman Tsarukyan, and Arman Tsarukyan in his last fight beat Charles Oliveira. Now Arman might be a bit more dense than what Ilia is. I mean, we haven't seen Ilia at lightweight, but I mean, Arman's never making 145. Ilia has done before, so there is that to factor in. But Ilia Topuria is the same size as him, so let's just rule that shit out right away. They say about Charles Oliveira being much bigger. Yes, Oliveira will probably weigh a lot more than Ilia Topuria on the night, but and they go on about the height of Charles Oliveira as well, because Oliveira has a 3-inch height advantage on Ilia Topuria. He actually has a 5-inch reach advantage on Ilia Topuria. But Ilia Topuria has been in there with Max Holloway, and if my memory serves me correctly, Holloway is taller than Charles Oliveira. And look at the performance that Ilia Topuria had against Max Holloway. The power of will Ilia's punch power travel up to lightweight? That's another thing I'm seeing on social media. Like, yo, have you not seen the Jai Herbert knockout? And before people go, he knocked out Jai Herbert, man, it's not Charles Do Bronx Oliveira. Oliveira technically is a much better fighter than Jai Herbert, but chin for chin, Oliveira's chin, he's just got really good recoverability. That's not even a word, but you know what I'm trying to say here. Ilia's probably most devastating knockout has happened at 155 pounds over Jai Herbert. He fucking folded Jai Herbert like a deck chair. So we know that his power translates. So let's just go through the fight. Obviously, Oliveira has a lot of advantages in terms of physical advantages in the height and the reach, but Oliveira's striking style complements Ilia Topuria. Let's just be honest. Oliveira is a come forward type of fighter. Oliveira is aggressive with his knees, his in the clinch, his knees, his kicks. Does have some pretty good straight shots, but you know, Oliveira's not going to be on the back foot using his length, popping the jab at Ilia Topuria. That's just not Oliveira's way of fighting. That Oliveira's not going to use those advantages. He is going to come forward and meet Ilia Topuria head on. So all the advantages that he has in terms of his length and his reach, he's not going to use them against Ilia. That's not his fighting style. Now, Oliveira is like Ilia Topuria, both forward, heavy fighters, pressure fighters. But Ilia Topuria, his footwork, go back and watch the Volkanovski matchup. It's just one I watched last night, right? Ilia does a really good job of cutting off the cage. He actually cuts off the cage better than Charles Oliveira, just with his lateral movement. Ilia Topuria will make Charles Oliveira fight on the back foot. That's just factual information with the way Ilia will move his feet in there. You watch him in the Volkanovski matchup, it's really small movements laterally, cutting off the cage, kind of meeting where Volkanovski's going. And Volkanovski's a much better mover than Oliveira and is more comfortable fighting on the back foot than what Oliveira is. So this will all be, you know, this isn't playing into Oliveira's strong suit on the feet, fighting off the back foot. So you see him make the wee moves laterally, and then he makes a one big advance. Then it's back to the wee small movements laterally, cutting off the cage. Then it's one big advance. And then he's just cutting you down until there's fucking nowhere to go. And that's where he lets the shots go. I think the leg kicks of Topuria are going to be a big problem for Charles Oliveira. Now, Ilia Topuria is more heavy on his lead leg, than what Oliveira is. So Oliveira could have success against Ilia Topuria with the leg kicks. But I think Ilya will outleg kick Charles Oliveira, and I think he's going to have Oliveira on the back foot. He's going to cut off the cage. Now, I can see Oliveira maybe stunting Ilya's movement with a big knee up the middle. That could happen. I mean, Ilia Topuria is the shorter guy, so a big knee up the middle is a perfect shot for Charles Oliveira if he's able to lure Ilia Topuria in. And as Topuria is getting ready to blitz in and start the exchange with Oliveira, if Oliveira is able to time a perfectly timed knee, he could knock out Ilia Topuria with that. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Oliveira is going to have that timing on the back foot, to be honest. The leg kicks, it's going to stunt Oliveira. People say about Oliveira in his last performance, patient Oliveira, man. He's going to out-grapple Ilia. I just don't see that happening, to be honest. Now, Ilia Topuria's grappling, I mean, it's kind of like... Some people overrate it, and I'm one of them people that's like, people forget, man, that Ilia Topuria came into the sport as a grappler, but his grappling at a high level is very untested. I mean, we've seen Bryce Mitchell have success in the grappling with him, so how will he look against someone like Charles Oliveira? I just don't think Oliveira is going to be able to get the grappling off on Ilia, to be honest. I just don't see it at all. Like, Oliveira doesn't shoot really good double legs or anything, you know, that's the difference. Bryce Mitchell can time a really good shot, a really good takedown, whether that be with a double leg or something like that. Oliveira's just not doing that, in my opinion. He's better at getting you up against the cage, getting a body lock, taking you down that way. I just don't see him being able to utilise that style of grappling against Ilia Topuria. But again, I could be wrong. Ilia Topuria is pretty untested in that category. We're kind of just going off what Ilia Topuria tells us, that he is an elite grappler, and just what we've seen in previous fights, but again, that's at a much lower level of competition. But how I see this fight going, the leg kicks, I think they're going to really compromise Charles Oliveira. I think Ilia Topuria is going to have a really good first round. I think the first round is going to be very slow, if you get what I mean. I don't think there's going to be a lot of output. I think Ilia is going to be making a lot of reads on Charles Oliveira. And then in round two, I think Ilia Topuria, it's going to be very similar to kind of how he got Volkanovski. I think he's going to have Oliveira backed up, cornered against the cage, and then he's going to just lunge in and let the shots go. Now, another thing as well, I think Oliveira could really utilise the clinch in there against Ilia Topuria, like a tie clinch. I think that would be good for him to let the knees go off in those clinches. But the other issue with that is if Oliveira initiates the clinch, say he goes for a tie clinch, Ilia Topuria does a really good job of mixing up head and body shots. So I think if Oliveira is able to latch up a tie clinch on him, Ilia Topuria is going to just get the hips in close and just blitz his body and absolutely butcher him on the body. But yeah, how I see this fight going, leg kicks, stun Charles Oliveira, a very slow, methodical first round. Ilia Topuria, again in the second round, utilising the leg kicks, having Charles Oliveira on the back foot. He'll have him pinned up against the cage, and it'll be a very, very similar stoppage to what we've seen in the Volkanovski matchup, in my opinion. Now, to be honest, I can see Ilia winning this anyway. I think he could beat Oliveira by decision. KO is what I'm going to go for, but I really just see Ilia Topuria on some, like, I just see him on some Islam Makhachev type shit, just Darce choking Charles Oliveira after dropping him. I don't know. I just see it. I just sense it. I can smell it in the room. But I'm going to go Ilia Topuria, second round KO. Don't be surprised if Oliveira retires after this fight. That's all I'm going to say. Moving on, we have got the flyweight title fight between Pantoja and Kai Kara-France. Just quickly, I'm going to pop them up on screen now. Pantoja's custom fight shorts, goddamn, they are the best custom fight shorts of all time. Back to this fight. Look, we have seen this fight before in The Ultimate Fighter. I went back and rewatched it. It was a very, very close fight. Pantoja done way better on the feet than I expected, and Kai Kara-France done way better in the grappling than what I expected in that matchup. It was very close. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. How I see this fight going is, I think it's going to play out very, very competitive. I think it's going to be a really close fight early on, because stylistically, Kai Kara-France, in my opinion, gives Pantoja his toughest test. He's a better striker than Pantoja. He's a bigger puncher than Pantoja. Not that I think Kai Kara-France is going to knock out Pantoja, but maybe Kai Kara-France hits him with some and really earns the respect of Pantoja, which kind of has him, I don't know, maybe not be as aggressive and front foot heavy with the pressure. Maybe Pantoja's like, fuck, I mean, he just cracked me there, and be a bit hesitant to keep on the pressure on Kai Kara-France. And his takedown defense, he's got really good balance. He's hard to get down. He scrambles well. But with that being said, Pantoja's just a winner. He really is. I think Pantoja is going to outwork Kai Car-France. I think Kai Car-France is going to have success really early on against Pantoja, but I think Pantoja's just forward, pressure-heavy style. I think he's going to really make Kai Car-France work. If you go back and look at the Askar Askarov fight, Kai Car-France showed really good takedown defense in there, but at points he did expose his back. And if Pantoja gets to those positions on the back, like Askar Askarov got, the fight's over. Pantoja is going to sub him. So that is something to think of. But I think Kai Car-France takes the first 2 rounds, looks really good against Pantoja, catches him with some big shots, cuts up Pantoja because he does have a lot of scar tissue around his face and he does wear damage quite a lot. But then I think rounds 3, 4 and 5, that's where Pantoja's really going to step on the gas. I think then he's going to have a lot more success on the feet as Kai Car-France starts to fade. And I think he's going to really utilise his grappling in the later stages of the fight. I still think he will utilise his grappling early on. That's what I mean by say he's just going to really work Kai Car-France. He's going to just really go out there and just put a pace on him. And I think he's going to beat him by decision. That's my prediction. Pantoja's just a winner. He really is. I think later on in the fight he'll have success in the striking. Do you know what I think will work for him really well? Like I said, in the first 2 rounds, I think Kai Car-France will just out tit for tat him, land the better shots on the feet. But what I think I can see Pantoja being able to utilise, and we've seen it in a couple of his fights, see whenever he just blitzes in, landing shots to the body. I think he's going to utilise this really well against Kai Car-France, and that's going to really help him in the fact he's going to outwork him and drain him. And then as the fight goes on, that's where Pantoja's going to take over. Pantoja by decision. Moving on, we have got Beneil Dariush versus Money Moicano. Now, can Moicano afford to lose back-to-back fights? I don't know. Beneil Dariush has been out of the cage for a very long time. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He was knocked out in the first round in both fights, but that was against Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. Moicano is coming off that loss to Islam Makhachev. Short notice fight, if you know what I mean. He had a full training camp. He was meant to fight Beneil Dariush on that card, but then stepped up to fight Islam Makhachev. Didn't take much damage in there. Got submitted in the first round, but before that had a very dominant performance against Benoit Saint Denis. And I think that performance against Benoit Saint Denis really clouded my view on Moicano. When this fight got announced at UFC 311, I was all in favour of him beating Beneil Dariush. I thought Beneil Dariush was washed, etc. I thought he was like 90 years of age just by looking at him. They're actually the same age. And I think the time out of the cage is really going to help Beneil Dariush. Look, Moicano had a dominant round against Benoit Saint Denis. Like, absolutely butchered him. The damage he was able to get off on him was insane. He's not going to be able to do that to Beneil Dariush. He's not going to have that success. I don't think Moicano can take down Beneil Dariush. I just don't think that's going to happen. On the feet, I think this fight is going to be pretty close. Beneil is slow, yes, but has a really good rear body kick. He has a southpaw and has a really well-timed overhand left. And he does carry power. Now, Moicano isn't chinny, but he is there to be hit. Like, he had a dominant round against Benoit Saint Denis in the first round, and then the second round, Benoit Saint Denis was absolutely fucking deformed looking, but was still outlanding him on the feet. So there are questions there about Moicano on the feet. Obviously, Jalen Turner was able to drop him as well. I think Beneil Dariush is going to win this matchup. I just trust in Beneil Dariush more. I think we are going to see grappling being utilised in this matchup. I think there's going to be a lot of scrambling going on in there, where I just think Beneil Dariush is going to get the upper hand on Moicano. And I just like him in this matchup more, to be honest. I can see him catching Moicano as Moicano comes in with a big left hand, dropping him, and then controlling him for a round. Or maybe not controlling him for an entire round, but laying on him, you know, getting the work in on him, maybe looking for some submissions where Moicano's able to build back up to his base, and there's a lot of scrambling going on in there. I think Beneil Dariush is going to win this fight by decision. A part of me feels like he's going to stop Moicano, which is just, that's ridiculous. But I am backing my boy Beneil. I even picked him to beat Charles Oliveira. He's still my boy! Beneil Dariush beats Moicano. Moving on, Royval versus Joshua Van. I cannot wait for this matchup. I think it's going to be really fun. But I will not be blinded by recency bias and what all the cool kids are going on about. Brandon Royval is going to light up Joshua Van in there. People might not, people won't agree with me on this one. Joshua Van coming off that really good performance against Bruno Silva, got the stoppage. He looked really good in there, but we've seen him struggle. I went blank. What was his loss in the UFC? Fuck! Oh, I can't remember his name. What the fuck did you call him? Anyway, he was a longer, rangier striker that gave Joshua Van problems in there. Royval is really underrated in my opinion. See his Nate Diaz style of him, like his striking style. I think he's just going to overwhelm Joshua Van. I think Van's going to really struggle in here. Royval's massive for flyweight. He's 5'9". Joshua Van's 5'5". I think he's going to struggle to get in too close range with Brandon Royval. I think Royval's just going to out-volume him in there. I think he's going to hit him with those I don't think he's going to knock Joshua Van out, but I think he's just going to just pepper him up with shots, just out-volume him and win by decision. Although I could see a Royval stoppage, if I'm being honest. I would like Joshua Van to win. I really would. But I'm going to be going for Brandon Royval to just outwork, out-volume Joshua Van on the feet. Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Look, this fight's kind of came out of the blue, out of nowhere. Obviously, Peyton Talbot's coming off that loss to Barcelos. He's coming off a win over Cody Garbrandt. Not that that means much. But Barcelos is building a wee bit of a resume for himself here. Felipe Lima, yes. I mean, this is going to be a fun fight. If Peyton Talbot's able to keep the fight in the feet, he wins. I think he has been working on his wrestling with Frank Ocean in the bedroom. I am going to put my trust in that. I am going to go for Peyton Talbot to win this fight. Yeah, Peyton Talbot's going to beat him. I think he keeps it on the feet and he beats him up on the feet, in my opinion. Look at the height difference. Talbot's 5'10", Lima's 5'6". Not much of a reach advantage for Peyton Talbot, but there's a big advantage in terms of the height-wise for him. This is actually a pretty difficult one to score. Because if Peyton Talbot hasn't worked on his grappling and Lima can expose it again. I'm going to go Peyton Talbot. I think he keeps it on the feet and wins. Moving on, Jack Hermansson versus Gregory Rodriguez. I am going to be going for Gregory Rodriguez in this matchup. I either think he stops Jack Hermansson either early on in the first round or early on in the second round. I think he's going to really damage and beat up Jack Hermansson. Jack Hermansson, yes, obviously is the fraud check master. Gregory Rodriguez is coming off a loss to Jared Cannonier. He's massive for the division. He can grapple. He's a big puncher. The fact that this is 3 rounds as well is in favour of Gregory Rodriguez. I think Gregory Rodriguez will take the first 2 rounds based on damage. Jack Hermansson will really win the 3rd round, and people will be saying if there was 4 and 5, Jack Hermansson would have beat him. I think Gregory Rodriguez will significantly slow down in the 3rd round, but Jack Hermansson isn't a big puncher either. I think a lot of people are being clouded by his win over Joe Pyfer. Yes, it was a good win, but Joe Pyfer did take the first 2 rounds off Jack Hermansson, and then he just crafty vetted him. But there's not that time on the clock in this matchup. I think Gregory Rodriguez takes the first 2 rounds, beats Jack Hermansson. I'm going to say by 2nd round KO or decision. Haider Emil versus Jose Delgado. Haider Emil is going to win this matchup. He's coming off a split decision win over Gomez, but before that had 2 wins by KO. I don't, were they first round KOs? One of them was in the first round. I don't know if both of them were, but he's undefeated. I think he's better than Jose Delgado in my opinion. Vivian Araujo versus Tracy Cortez, a women's mixed martial arts matchup. Tracy Cortez is a big favourite, but that's purely based on how she looks, let's just be honest. I don't really give a fuck or care who wins this. Cortez is a big favourite. I actually think she's pretty overrated, to be honest. I think it goes all 3 rounds, and we'll go Tracy Cortez to win. Women's fights are hard to pick. Terrence McKinney is going to knock out Borshev in the very first round, in my opinion. Sadiq Dumas, I didn't realise this guy was out of prison and back fighting. Jackson, who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that? Let's click into him. Who the fuck is that? Anybody know? Like, this fight's literally just been made. Anyway, moving on. Jonathan Denez is going to beat Alvin Hines. Jonathan Denez, obviously former Glory kickboxer, was undefeated, did lose to Topuria, but that was because of his grappling. Alvin Hines is not going to grapple with Jonathan Denez, and I just think he's better on the feet. And finally, Jacob Smith is going to absolutely annihilate Nico Price inside 1 round. So those are my UFC 317 predictions. Let me know yours in the comments below. I will be doing a watch along, so tune in for that. And as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you all again in the next one.